kind of worthwhile. Thank you, Jelena. So it might be worthwhile just to say a little bit about how we're going to be doing this. So I will be now switching to Bosnian. Dobro večer svima koji su iz naših govornih područja. Mi večeras imamo veliku privilegiju da čujemo i neku djecu u pozadini. Djeca su naravno su djeca uvijek dobrodošla. Mihajla, hvala vam i dobrodošli također i dobrodošla i vaša djeca. Ono što ćemo večeras uraditi za koji trenutak jeste da ćemo pokušati da vidimo na koji način ćemo raditi večerašnju radionicu. Ona će, kao što znate, biti dvojezična. Ja trenutno govorim na našem jeziku, ali za koji trenutak ću se prebaciti i na engleski jezik. I od tog trenutka ćete vi, svi koji želite da pratite prijevode, moći to da uradite kada ja uključim prijevod. Za neki koji su do sada bili, vi već znate da je to dole u ovoj maloj ikonici koja će vam se pojaviti u donjem uglu, ovisno ako ste na laptopu, kugle zemaljske, i tu možete odabrati opciju bosanski, srpski ili hrvatski jezik koji ja tako nazivam, i moći ćete onda da čujete prevode kada Mia bude radila svoju prezentaciju. So Mia, good evening. I was just explaining to our participants tonight that in a second when you start with your presentation and just before we go into the actual topic, there will be an opportunity for them to select the language if they would like to use an interpretation that is being provided by us in Bosnian, Serbian, and Croatian, which essentially is the language that I call three languages, but it's just one language for me. So yeah, so that's it for tonight. Maybe in the meantime, would it be useful just to say, to ask our participants maybe to say where they're coming from, or in the chat, or anything until we wait? Or Mia, are you comfortable with?
Yes, if it's okay for you to write to chat your name and just briefly why you're here.
Rekla da će biti prenijeta.
Dakle večeras ono što možete da uradite jeste da bit će prevod, da ako želite prije nego što krenemo u zvanični dio sa prevoda koji će biti simultani za vas i koji ćete trebati odabrati na ikonici koja će vam se pojaviti. Samo čekamo svi da nam se pojave, dok čekamo da nam svi dođu. Možete, ako želite, na chatu napisati odakle dolazite. I možete i svoje ime također, a možete i zbog čega ste, na primjer, večeras evo ovdje, na kojem je god jeziku, mi ćemo vrlo rado to prevesti mi, a sigurno da će ona biti znatiželjna da vidi kako to izgleda na različitim jezicima.
And you can also write, if you want, your name and your role why you are here.
Vaše ime, dakle, i vašu
That you are here as a mother or as a nurse or whatever you want to kind of present yourself with.
Vaše ime i vašu ulogu, bilo da ste u ulozi majke, medicinske sestre, profesionalca, bilo kako želite da se predstavite. Na način na koji vam to odgovara.
And thank you for having the cameras on now. It's very nice to see you so we can arrive to the space together.
I hvala svima koji ste upalili kamere, vrlo je lijepo imati ovaj prostor i dijeliti ovaj prostor na ovaj način sa vama. So we have Elvira, she's saying hello from Tuzla, that's in Bosnia. I am here because each time I am really enjoying this learning and being together. I'm a teacher at high school. We have Ružica, she's a social pedagogue. Dobro večer, Ružica. So we have Antonia from Karlovac, Croatia. She's currently studying at the Cybernetic and Systemic Therapy School. Elma, she's a teacher at high school and elementary school. Alisa from Ojak, that's in Bosnia. She's a social worker in the Center for Mental Health. And she's really looking forward tonight to adopt new knowledges and new skills, or to develop them. Hvala, Lisa. Pozdrav, Lisa. Selma from Sarajevo. She works at the educational center with the children who are in the conflict with law, and she's looking forward to being here tonight.
And of course, this is not only for me, this is for you also to know who you are.
Ovo naravno, kaže mi, nije samo za mene, ovo je za vas da i vi znate za kim večeras evo, dijelite ovaj prostor. Now we have Igor. He's from Zagreb, and he also attends a school for systemic therapy and cybernetics in Croatia. Mirela, she is from Rijeka. That's also a lovely town in Croatia. She is attending also the school for systemic therapy. Then we have Mihaela from Zagreb, and she's a mother of 3, where she works as a medical nurse at the psychiatry. And now she is preparing her final essay at the School of Cybernetics and Systemic Therapy. Tamara from Varaždin, Croatia. She's a manager as well, attending a School for Cybernetics and Systemic Therapy from Croatia.
Okay.
So we have Yasmina, psychologist and systemic therapist from Sarajevo, which you've met already, I think. Yasmina is somewhere under these. There she is. Hi,
Yes.
Yasmina.
Hello.
Anna Maria, systemic psychotherapist from Romania, Timișoara. Alma Sarajevo, she's attending education at Mentis. And oh yes, and Mihaela is asking if we can explain one more time for the translation. Absolutely. So we have Snježana from Foča. She's a special pedagogue and she works as a family counselor, and she's a director of the Center for Social Work. Dobro večer, Snježana. Drago nam je da ste večeras s nama. Dugo se nismo vidjeli. So on behalf of Mentis and on behalf of our school, so we have a lot of people basically from the region tonight. And I was wondering, Mia, if you would like to wait for another 5 minutes, or would you like to start with introduction and...
Well, maybe we will start, because I could imagine that people are kind of dropping in, so...
Možda ćemo i početi zbog toga jer vjerovatno ljudi do sada će se uključivati kako budu htjeli. So I can give then an introduction and just share what I shared with you before, if that's okay, on behalf of the... Would that be okay for you?
Yes.
Is it okay if I do it in my language and then I can
Of
also...
course, yes.
Yeah, okay. So thank you. Dakle, prije nego što krenemo večeras, meni je zaista veliko zadovoljstvo i privilegija da večeras pozdravimo Miju Kurtti koja je sa nama. Za koji trenutak ja ću pročitati dobrodošlicu i reći ću vam malo kratko o Miji. Prije nego što krenemo, samo da nama je veliko zadovoljstvo u Mentisu da imamo priliku da imamo ovako nevjerovatne govornike koji su ostavili velikog traga i koji još uvijek ostavljaju velikog traga u razvoju dijaloških perspektiva. Za večeras, dame i gospodo, uvaženi kolege, ja želim da vas pozdravim i da vam zaželim dobrodošlicu na još jedan webinar koji na ovaj način također daje ideju i daje podršku održavanju 7. konferencije dijaloških praksi koja će biti međunarodna i održava se u Sarajevu od 2. do 5. aprila. Zove se Od konflikta do konekcije, mogućnosti za dijaloge preko konflikta. Sa mojim velikim zadovoljstvom ja večeras pozdravljam i predstavljam vam našu uvaženu gošću koja je večeras sa nama, Mia Kurtti. Mia je posvećena medicinska sestra koja ima master iz zdravstvene brige i menadžmenta i trenutno završava i drugi iz socijalnih nauka. Ona je porodična terapeutkinja i isto tako trenerica i supervizorica iz polja otvorenog dijaloga. Za preko više od 2 dekade ona je bila okosnica u mentalnom zdravlju i uslugama u zapadnom Laplandu, u Finskoj, dok je radila sa suosjećanjem sa osobama, porodicama i sa njihovim mrežama. Posljednjih 10 godina Mia ima vrlo intenzivno znanje i jako je puno radila vani. Obučavala je profesionalce u različitim internacionalnim kontekstima otvorenog dijaloga i kolaborativnih programa u Americi, Ujedinjenom Kraljevstvu, Italiji, Danskoj i Japanu. Njena misija tokom ovih treninga i procesa jeste bila da otvori i da proširi dijaloge. Na isti način je uvažavala okruženje koje podržava ljude u njihovoj kreativnosti i u njihovim vlastitim resursima. Mia je strastvena oko toga da ohrabri dakle, sve ljude koji se bave ili interesuju za mentalno zdravlje, da se oni bave svojim životnim narativima, razumijevajući na koji način njihove lične priče utječu na profesionalne prakse. Ona vjeruje da je samo istraživanje obogaćuje i podržava ne samo nas, nego i podržava i nas u pružanju podrške drugima. Ona trenutno živi u Torniju sa svojom porodicom i nalazi inspiraciju u prirodi i u umjetnosti, koja joj služi i kao lični izvor snage i kreativnosti. Večeras Mia će se nama podijeliti svoje nevjerovatno iskustvo u otvorenom dijalogu i ponuditi nam ideje na koji način se ovaj transformativni rad može razumjeti i koristiti. Molim vas da me podržite i da zaželimo toplu dobrodošlicu našoj večerašnjoj gošći Mii Kurtti. So would you like me to read that now in English? Because we do have few people who I believe don't understand my language.
Yes, you can do that.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, for all of you who have joined us tonight and do not speak one of our esteemed languages, I'd like to welcome you and wish you good evening and warm welcome to our webinar as we announce the 7th Conference on Dialogical Practices, called From Conflict to Connection, Possibilities for Dialogues Beyond Conflicts, that will be taking place in Sarajevo, my homeland city, from 2nd to 5th of April next year. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest tonight and the guest speaker, Mia Kurtti. Mia is a dedicated nurse with a master's in healthcare and management and ongoing master of science. She is a family therapist and an open dialogue trainer and supervisor. For over 2 decades, she has been a cornerstone in mental health services in West Lapland, Finland, working compassionately with individuals and their networks. In the past 10 years, Mia has extended her expertise globally, training professionals in numerous international open dialogue and collaborative programs across the UK, USA, Italy, Denmark, and Japan. Her mission in these trainings process is to open and expand dialogues, fostering an environment that enhances people's creativity and resourcefulness. Mia is passionate about encouraging mental health practitioners to delve into their own life narratives, understanding how their personal stories influence their professional practice. She believes that this self-exploration enriches their support they provide to others. Residing in Tornio with her family, Mia finds inspiration in nature and the arts, which serve as her personal source of strength and creativity. Tonight, with great pleasure, Mia will share her invaluable experiences with open dialogue and offer insights into her transformative work. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mia Kurtti. Mia, the floor is yours, and I will now initiate interpretation, which might mean that you might be switching the channels and also the colleagues would like to listen to you in English. Poštovani kolege i kolegice, za koji trenutak ću ja sada pokrenuti i simultani prevod, što će praktično značiti da u momentu kada odaberete jezik i opciju na globu koji vam se pojavi, možete odabrati da slušate bosanski, srpski ili hrvatski, dok će Mia govoriti na engleskom. Tako da možemo početi i pokušati sa tim procesom. Evo ga.
Thank you very much, Armina, for this invitation and for inviting me to April to Sarajevo. This is truly an honor and a privilege. And I have been thinking that what to share this evening with you, because when we are, for example, when we are talking about families, I always want to bring in the family voice as well. So that was something that I added just half an hour before I got here. But I will share the presentation here. And those of you who don't listen to the translation, who listen to me speaking English, please interrupt or ask if you don't understand what I say for any reason, because English is not my mother tongue either. My mother tongue is Finnish, which is very different from English. But I will start from here. So, sorry. Here. So, first, I will say a few words about myself, even though Armina was introducing me in a very lovely way. And during the pandemic, I started to use photos from my region just to make the context more clearer, where I come from and when I talk about the work, because as we know, everything is contextual. So this approach was developed in Western Lapland, Finland. So most of the photos are from there or from the northern Finland, where I spend a lot of time with my partner. We like hiking and spending time in nature. This is Tornio River, which is one of the most longest free rivers in Europe, and I live in the shores of that. Although I have been living in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, for the last 2 years since I've been doing my master's in social and public policies. But I have been working in healthcare services from 1996 and in mental health services from 2001. And that has all my experience comes from Western Lapland. So I don't know any other ways of organizing services than the open dialogue way of doing that. I'm also the board member in Finnish Association of Family and Couple Therapy. And why I applied in my middle age, I'm not 50 yet, but quite soon, was that during the pandemic, there were lots of changes in my life. My daughter moved away from home and the work was changing a lot. And I had been going and traveling around quite many years already. And then I was doing with the WHO, they have an initiative called Quality Rights. So we were having a process together where they were creating the guidelines of good practices, where open dialogue is one of those. That was 1.5 year process, and it was very inspiring. So I really wanted to understand more about the policies around mental health services. And also because I've been traveling in different countries, I saw the diversity of how services are organized and delivered and how different formats of funding they have. So I've been very happy that I've been able to study those things more at this moment. I also studied international law and human rights legislation, human rights law, because of course, as we know, that is also very much connected to the psychiatric care. But here is Tornio, the Finland and Tornio. I was born and raised in a middle class family. My grandmother, she fled from Karelia during the Second World War. She was extremely sad woman after all those processes that took place there. My father, he is also originally from Russian border. from Finnish side, and they moved to Tornio with their families when they were small. So I have been born and raised in Western Lapland and Western Finland in Swedish border. And we are practically a same town. So families, they live in both sides of the border of Finland and Sweden. So when we are talking about open dialogue, so my position, how I talk about this approach and what I share from here, it comes from my conversations with those people who started to work in Keropudas Hospital in the region in the early 80s. And one of those people was Markku Sutela. So when we are talking about open dialogue, it is very important to understand and to acknowledge that it's an approach. It's not a model. It's not an intervention that can be applied and implement as such. It's truly an approach that includes various different dimensions about how to deliver the services, what is the worldview, what is the dialogic practice in the room when we are with people and their families, and so on. So it was in the early 80s when they started to develop these ideas, and it was until mid 90s when they started to call it open dialogue. So in the region, just move that away. In the region, in the early 80s, the northern Finland had really high numbers of diagnosis of schizophrenia. So there were also several legislative changes in Finnish mental health legislation. So it was really a new era in that in psychiatric care. So people, new staff who came to work there, they really needed to think. They needed to think that how to organize the care, because whatever they were doing at this moment didn't work. And there was in southern Finland, Yrjö Alanen, he was a psychiatrist. So his team, they started to think in the mid 70s that instead of diagnosing people, offering medication and work as a treatment for them, what if they could discuss with the persons and their networks and really think together in a need adapted way how to organize the care and treatment for them. So the staff members and the team in Keropudas was very inspired about their work. And also they wanted to, they started to invite family members because Keropudas Hospital, it was built in the early 60s. So people, the patients were living there, many of them. So they started to invite the family members of these people. And when they started to do that, they started to have the conversations. People who hadn't seen each other for 10 years, they started to talk about the day when their loved one came to the hospital like it was yesterday. So they really, really understood that this has a significance in it. We need to look more what we can, how we can change our system and how we can include the family members so that not family members and the people who are there as patients, so that they wouldn't be so isolated. So it was a long process. And of course, as we know, when we invite family members to the room and when we discuss, there's lots of pain, there's lots of agony in the room. So they really understood also that we need skills to be able to hold the space. So they started to invite in Harlan Anderson, Harry Gulishan, Lynn Hoffman, family therapists from USA. Also, they started to work together closely with social psychiatrist Tom Andersen and his team in Tromsø. And in 1984, they became to this conclusion that they started to have these treatment or network meetings together with the client, with the patient and their family. And they started to design the treatment processes in that one room, because also Keropura's hospital was very hierarchical place. It had a very hierarchical culture, so that it was usually a psychiatrist who was ordering medication to the patients, and it was nurses who were delivering the message to them. So they decided that we are not going to talk about the people anymore when they are not present. So they started to do this, and in the same time, they started to do systematic research, and they started to train people to become family therapists. Although they did realize when they started to do very traditional family therapy, which was based on the hypothesizing things and hypothesizing the situation, they realized that it didn't feel comfortable for them. So there were many phases in this developmental work until it developed towards more dialogic presence than hypothesizing people's experiences and relationships. So after 15 years of having trainings, of doing research about the outcomes, for example, one outcome came from this practice that they decided that before they are admitting any person into the hospital, they needed to have a network meeting together with the family where they are discussing about the reasons, about the worries, why people are here. And when they started to do that, they saw that the admission rate went down 40%. They were able to organize the care and treatment in people's homes. And of course, this was interpreted as a good outcome. So they were kind of doing these checkings about their practice all the time. And also in a national way, in Finland, there was a study on, it was called a schizophrenia project, where they were looking in 7 different sites that what are the outcomes for the people, for the patients who have schizophrenia diagnosis, if they include family members to the treatment and care. And there were other factors too. And the Western Lapland had very good outcomes on that. And they continued the research in the early 90s. And when they were looking at the good outcomes, so to say, so when people were recovering from the first episode psychosis and they were reading through all the recordings and records from the people's notes, and after all the experiences and supervisions and trainings, they came to these 7 principles that are still guiding our services. And when I went there 2001, I was taught these immediately, that this is how our services are organized. And when we are talking about the Western Lapland, we are talking about the area that had in the early 80s and in the 90s, it had 70,000 people, inhabitants. Nowadays, we have about 60,000. So it's not a big city, a big area in that way. So there was only this one service that was providing the help for all the people. And they decided, because in Finland, generally, you need to go to see the GP if you are worried about yourself or you need treatment or care, or you are worried about your family members. You are taking people to the GPs, and they must write a referral in order to offer treatment in a special healthcare district, as our area has been. But in our services, they decided on a very early stage in the 80s that they don't need referrals. Instead of that, there's a phone number that is available for everybody 24/7. So this is the most common way of people contacting us, that they are calling. We are having shifts where I was doing the work for 10 years, where I was taking the calls in and organizing the treatment and care. And many times it is the one who is picking the phone who is also part of the treatment team. But sometimes that's not the case. Nowadays, of course, when we have the different digital applications and systems, people do also contact us other ways than only calling us. But the immediate help has this very core understanding that there's always a crisis in a network when they are contacting the services, the psychiatric services. And when there's a crisis, the window is open and our emotional, cognitive resources are available for the therapeutic work. So anyone can call, but of course we like people to inform the person they are worried about that and negotiate with them and decide with them that now we are going to call to local mental health services. So it's always a nurse who preferably has a family therapy training who is responding to the phone, because it's not only checking in that what are the symptoms. It is truly having a conversation about what are they worried about, who knows about these worries, why do they call just now, and where do they want to meet? Is it in their home? Do they want to come to the clinic? Who can we invite to the meeting? And so on and so on. So in our area nowadays, many people know that they can really call us and we can negotiate together how to move on in this situation. And when I'm responsible of taking the calls, I have all the schedules of my colleagues, so I can see if there needs to be a team going to Lisa's home tomorrow at 9 a.m., who can go there, or if someone can go to meet Matti and their family in school this evening. So the one who takes the phone calls really has the responsibility of organizing the start of the treatment and care. And it is the one team who is going to be working with the family and network from that on until the end of the process. But we don't turn people away. We don't say to them that this is not the right place to call. We help them to find the right people who can join the first meeting. Sometimes the only one meeting can be enough. And of course, there are situations where people call when they have kind of a normative crisis because the threshold is so low. They can call, I'm in the middle of a divorce. Can I maybe see you in 3 weeks or so on? So 24-hour rule that when we are meeting with people, of course, doesn't apply with everybody because not everybody needs meeting immediately. But this is the start of the process. And of course, it is very crucial that what kind of call, what kind of conversation we have on the phone when they call, because it really sets up the tone to the whole treatment process. So in our clinic, there was this one family, Marlene, who was 14 years old, and her mother and father. Marlene was having voices. She was experiencing hallucinations as she was defining those herself. So they were having a treatment process for 2 years, and they wrote together an article, the team and the family. So I have the permission of using these examples. So mother said, as soon as Monday morning dawned, I called the youth psychiatric outpatient clinic and my panic was responded. I don't remember if the meeting was that afternoon or the next morning, but they responded quickly. The 3 of us arrived at the clinic and the therapy sessions began. In the beginning, we had up to 3 sessions a week, which was excellent to support us in this new situation. And Marlene was describing and writing that she was silent, she was filled with voices. She was so scared that it was barely enough for her to be able to be in. So the team had 3 meetings immediately during the same week. And this is the very core of the open dialogue process, that when we meet, We meet every day if needed in the beginning and discuss about the situation and what is needed. Do they need support at home? How do we discuss with them about the medication and so on? And how do we negotiate that who needs to be in a meeting and when? And this family and the team, they worked together for 2 years. And they had altogether 69 family meetings. Also, Marlene had her own meetings. This was 20 years ago, the process, so she has recovered since, and she's been studying at the university and lives her life. But from here, we come to this kind of a basic idea. And since many of you are doing the systemic family therapy training, there is this core understanding that we all know that we are all born into this web of relationships. So this idea of involving people's relational network is very pragmatic because we are really visiting people's lives. So when people are experiencing very difficult crises, the more intense the crisis is, the more important it is to include the family members. Even though the world, at least the Western world, and the mental health services and psychiatry is extremely individualized, and rhetorics in society is also following that. We can hear these sentences like that the most important relationship we have is with ourselves. And I think, and especially when we think about the youth and children, if we deliver this message, it can really leave behind very isolated and lonely people. So really how to honor the relational world where people are living in and invite that to be part of the treatment process when they are in crisis. And of course, we come and we need to be thinking that what do we think about the suffering? What does it mean? What are we talking about when we are talking about mental health? Are we talking about mental illness? Are we talking about psychiatric illnesses? And if we are, how are we with that phenomena in the room? And what kind of structures the practice requires? Because if we think that, for example, whatever we think about the phenomena is defining our practice. And for example, this photo, this is my daughter. We were hiking in northern Lapland, and she's standing there seemingly alone. But actually, this photo is taken by my partner, and I'm standing next to her. So she's not alone. She's just waiting for us to climb there. It was a very steep climb, so we are a bit behind her. But this is every single moment includes relational reality. So how do we invite that to be part of it? And how do people invite us to be part of it? And of course, when we think about when we are working there in a system, we need to be asking from ourselves, I think so, that what do we think about the families? What is our worldview based on relationships? Are families and networks, are they resources or are they obstacles for care and recovery? Are families or relationships something that we need to fix? And so on. So there are many questions, and people have different approaches and attitudes when we talk about the families. Some people might think when they hear that the family is coming to the meeting, oh my God, how can I handle this? How can I control all these people? And how can I control the conversation? Where other person might be thinking, wow, this is truly wonderful to have all these resources present in the room. So it makes my work so much easier, and this is so much more beneficial for the client and person. But the social network is really, it's something that people define themselves. It can be family members, it can be friends, work, colleagues, relatives, neighbors, and so on. So in that way, this is expanding from the family therapy practice, what is where family therapy is based much more on family. But here in our system, we are based also on the whole network, Who are they? What are the significant relationships? And how can we invite those to be part of the process? And of course, this is it has this purpose of increasing voices and possibilities, because when people are experiencing crises, there can be moments of stuckness. People are not knowing what to do. So when we have more people and more resources, we are able to have more dialogue around the challenges and problems people are facing. And one way to talk about this is also that we don't treat people or individuals. We are treating relationships between people. And this is, of course, also including the worldview that we become as we are in our relationships. Even though I know also this definition can include the kind of very negative understanding about the blaming of families or blaming the relationships. But we try to see those as resources, even though when they are the challenging ones, because all the relationships that we are having in our lives, they are significant in some ways. But then, of course, when we think about the community work, because this work doesn't only happen in psychiatry or in mental health services, it happens in society. It happens with the surrounding organizations. It happens in those borders where people are being met in this society. So we work with the social work, with the child welfare services, with the police. Schools and school nurses are extremely important collaborators with us, employment services, work healthcare, and youth services. And when I went there 2001 and we were establishing a new clinic for the adolescents and children, we didn't establish that on our own. Instead of that, it was a long process that included co-creative and collaborative discussions with the already existing services, where we were discussing that what is already offered to the families, what are the challenges these organizations that were there in the area, what were the challenges they were facing and naming in their work. And we joined them and we started to develop together this new psychiatric clinic that was dialogic and collaborative in its nature itself. So some thoughts that are guiding the work. Really, the crisis is an open space where people haven't made any decisions yet. So there is possibilities that which kind of turn the situation takes, and that makes it possible to work with the whole network. And of course, again, coming to the honoring piece that many of you also, of course, know that family and network is a group who share history together. So we are visiting them and we are honoring their history together and asking what has happened in those relationships. What do they want to bring into those conversations that we are having together that they see significant regarding the situation? And if we want to talk about the expertise, we think that family and network are experts on the content. They know what we should be talking about. And we know how the process goes. We know what it means when we are working as a team. We know about the reflecting processes. We know about the professional network that is surrounding us, who we can invite, who we can suggest to be helpful for the person. And I think I really like Pekka Holm. He's a trainer in Finland, and he's always talking about the resources and also pointing out to us as therapists or as practitioners that do we act in such a way that the resources of our clients and their networks are increasing so that they will have more ability and power in their own lives. I think this is a good question to stop into. And then the third principle is flexibility and mobility. So we don't have any treatment plans for people. The response is always need adapted, and It serves the special and changing needs of each person and their social network. And the meetings are arranged as often as needed. As said, it can be in the beginning of the treatment, and if the crisis is severe, we can meet every day if needed. And the meeting place is also jointly selected, so we can go to the home visits or meet in the clinic or in the school and so on. And also because when we are working in a team of 2 or 3 people, we can be flexible so that there is the continuity of the care. So if one person from the team is away, there's still 1 or 2 people who are left. So we don't want to have new people to join to the treatment team so that they would start the process all over again. Of course, that happens sometimes when people leave the work or something happens. But the core idea is that this team of 2 or 3 people, usually nurses, psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, that they are there for the one person and their family all the time, from the start, beginning of the process until the end of it. And then responsibility is one of the main principles. Before we had iPhones or the phones, there were phones on the table. So whoever is first contacted will be responsible for arranging the first meeting. So no one couldn't, when I went to work there and I was picking the phone, I couldn't say that I can't take responsibility on this. It was really my responsibility on starting to organize the first meeting. And then also, when we think about the hierarchical systems that many hospitals are living in, for example, my ex-mother-in-law, my daughter's grandmother, she worked in Keropudas Hospital for 40 years, since 60s. So she had been working there already almost 20 years when they started to have this new practice of having these treatment meetings where all the staff members were also asked, what do you think about the situation? What's on your mind? And they were so used, the nurses, that they didn't say almost nothing. They didn't say many things in the meetings. They were making notes. So it was really a big change for them as well. But nowadays, everybody know that when we are working together, every team member is responsible of the conversation. And also this includes the situations when we are discussing about the medication. Birgitta Alakare, who was the chief psychiatrist for many years there, she always said that when she starts to talk about the medication, if the family is asking or if the person is asking, it is also our task as team members to turn to her in front of the family and person and ask, can you say more about this idea of having a medication like this? Can you say more about the side effects and so on? So being transparent about our questions, about our comments, about all the different decisions we are making, the team members are helping each other to be transparent there for the family. And as said, we don't refer people to another authorities. We are inviting those. If we need to have someone from the housing services, we are inviting them. If we need to have someone from the police to talk about there might be a criminal, the justice process can be going on. We can invite them to talk about that and so on. And a one door principle. Psychological continuity, as we know, no matter what is the approach in care, even if it's in somatic care or in psychiatry and mental health, we know that psychological continuity is extremely beneficial. So the same team really should be in charge of the whole process, even though if people are in the hospital in between. We are following there. We are having meetings with the ward, with the hospital staff, and inviting families there as well. And this is also based on when we talk about the understanding. For example, this moment when we are here together now, when we leave this space, we can discuss and we can describe that how was this webinar for us, but we can't bring the essence, what happens in this present moment. We can't bring that to other places. And many times, if we think about the healing or understanding or gaining insights, they are in these small details in this present moment, in that dialogue that takes place here. So we can't remove the understanding to other people. So it is very important to have the continuity. And also when we think about the issues around safety, so of course it is easier to discuss with the people who know each other if there is some intense worries suddenly coming, for example, around self-harm or other issues. Well, then we are talking about the tolerance of uncertainty. It is said that this is the most difficult but most important, and this is connected to the worldview that we can't never know what is happening for you. We can't know how to fix this. We don't know how you came to this situation, but we are here for you, and we are going to be here for you for the whole process. And of course, as you know, when people are contacting the services, they might say, please tell me what's going on with my son, what's going on with me. People might be expecting a very quick fix, medication or hospitalization or other interventions, which can sometimes be needed and useful, but not always. So how do we tolerance and how do we tolerate this feeling, the urge to know things for other persons? Jukka Aaltonen, who was a professor and still is in Finland, he was supervising our team in the 80s and 90s. He's always talking about the otherness of others. We can't never know truly the otherness of others, but we can be curious about that, and we can connect with that, and we can offer ourselves to the dialogue with that. I'm going to say a few words about the reflective talk later on that we use in our treatment meetings. So then the last principle is dialogism, and that is connected to the network meetings. As said, 1984, they really decided that now they are going to do all the planning and all the decisions about people's treatment in these meetings. And they are not going to be deciding anything about their things outside of these meetings. Usually when people come, so we have 1 hour, or in the beginning when the crisis is intense, we have 2 hours for the meetings. And what we have been taking away with us from the systemic family therapy is the circular questions. We are using those a lot in the meetings. But we also begin with the history of this meeting, because as we know, when people enter to the services and they are in crisis, they can be extremely confused. Why are we here? What is this place? Who are these people? So we really spend time in the beginning to discuss that. What is the history of us being here? Who are we? And how we became to be here. And we spend time enough discussing on that, and also discussing how should we use this time? What are the topics that we should be discussing today? And then we are reflecting, we are discussing, and also in the end, we are always asking before we leave the meeting, has this been useful? And when shall we meet again? And the person, client, people, they have the last word of it. And I'm apologizing at this point. I'm talking in a short time, kind of big themes around open dialogue and practice, but I hope it makes sense to you. I I really wanted to bring this all here, even I did realize that it's a lot, but I hope that you get some sense of it. But one part of these meetings, when we are together, we are sitting in a circle and we are offering our reflections, because what makes it possible for us to discuss all the things there when people are present, so that we are not telling them what is happening and how we are feeling and what we are thinking about the situation as professionals. This practice comes from the family therapy. I don't know if you are still using the mirror walls, but in Norway in the mid-80s, Tom Madison was telling this, that there was a training session going on and there was a family and a team discussing. And then there was the observer team who was discussing behind the mirror wall about what they were seeing so that they could offer the hypothesis for the situation. So then they realized that what if we leave the microphone on so that people can hear us talking and speculating about the situation? And that's what they did. And they realized that they wanted to continue the practice like that. They wanted to be transparent about what happened in them and what they were thinking about the family situation and about the conversation that took place. And they continued their practice in Tromsø, so that there was always a reflective team that was sitting apart and listening there and offering reflections. But in Western Lapland, because we were living also this very hectic practice in a crisis clinic, when we are having a team and we are discussing, at some point of the meeting, we are saying to the family, is it okay that we are discussing a bit about what we have heard so far, and you can listen to us. And then we turn to watch each other and discuss. I'm feeling when Lisa was talking about X and Y and so on. So we are discussing openly, and yet, of course, not about ourselves, but about what we have been hearing and what kind of impact it has had for me, and maybe if there has been things that really struck me. And when we are returning those gifts that people have been given us in the conversation, we are returning that as a reflection. It can really open up new understandings, because we are probably using a bit different words than the family did. And also when we are discussing with each other, the people and the family, they can kind of take a rest from the meeting, because it can be a very intense situation when we are discussing and wondering what's going on and who is worried about what and so on. So it's really important afterwards, and of course there are very basic rules around reflections. We never judge, we don't make judgments, we don't assess, we don't criticize people. It is really a vulnerable place to be in as a person, as a client, as a patient, as a family member, to listen what people are talking about, what they heard me saying. So we never criticize anything they have been saying. And after that, we are always asking from each person if they want to comment on what was said. So the last slide I have is about some aspects, I tried to gather all this together. So we have at least these 3 dimensions in open dialogue. One is the service delivery system, that how do we organize and structure the services, how people are getting in, or how we are inviting people to seek help. Then there's the dialogic practice itself, which is based on the collaboration and co-creation and tolerating the uncertainty and aiming on dialogic presence. And then as an umbrella for all of this is the worldview that is looking at the human suffering from the point of view that how can we listen and relate and respond to them. And of course, it has the curiosity about human experience, instead of having ready-made hypotheses of the situation or possible diagnosis or so on.